So I think China very much understands that it needs to understand how the West works, how Germany works, and what it does well in order to help China.
Wise words from our today's guest, Jonathan Woetzel. Believe me, if there's someone who understands China and its relationship with the West, it's him. Jonathan is the global leader of the City Special Initiative at McKinsey, a senior partner and the director of the McKinsey Global Institute. He has lived in China since 1985, before Damian and me were even born. And today, he's part of our Englische Woche. Typically, our podcast is for German-speaking listeners, but once in a while, we meet super interesting English-speaking friends and have to invite them to talk to you and us and share their experience. So please bear with our Denglish, English with the German touch, because you will learn a lot.
Made in China. Von der Werkbank der Welt zum größten Konsumentenmarkt und Technologieführer. Eine Reise durch das Leben, Business und die Kultur im Reich der Mitte mit Damian Maib und Thomas Derksen.
So we're once again in our office in Shanghai, and we are very happy that we have the opportunity after 3 years doing some podcasts in person. Today, Jonathan Woetzel is with us, and I read in your profile that you also can speak German, right?
Ein bisschen, ja.
Ein bisschen.
Also ist nicht geübt.
Machen wir das dann auf Deutsch oder auf Englisch?
Nein, Englisch besser.
Auf Englisch, okay. So you have to bear with our German English. But I think for communication it's no problem.
With our German accent.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Better than mine.
But you have some German roots?
Yes. Now I am. My father was born here in Shanghai, but my grandparents came here from Hamburg in 1926. So
your grandparents came from Hamburg to Shanghai?
To Shanghai in 1926. Yeah, so
crazy story.
100 years of history.
so
100 years, yeah.
100 years ago. Crazy.
That's heritage.
Yeah. And now we are sitting in the office building. We are sitting here now. It is also from a German...
exactly, Karlowitz building, a German trading company back in the past.
Yes, there was a big community here. It never really had its own colony, but this is part of the international settlement that you're in right now.
Yeah, so. During World War II, we also had a huge Jewish community in Shanghai. A lot of people don't know.
Right, just across the river on the other side from where we are right now. So this one is... my grandparents were living in the international community, also not in the Jewish settlement or the ghetto. But that's just because my grandfather was German and my grandmother was Jewish. So.
Great. We are so happy to have you here. And as always, we start our podcast with a small game. It's really easy. It's called the A or B game. We ask you some questions, A or B. For example, I will ask you dog or cat, and you will answer very quickly.
Cat.
Okay, very easy. Okay, Damian, let's start.
Perfect. Beijing or Shanghai?
Shanghai.
Los Angeles or New York?
Los Angeles.
Pasta or chow mein?
Pasta.
Train or airplane?
Train.
First or business?
Business.
Air China or American Airlines?
Well, that's a hard one.
you have one opportunity to say pass.
Air China. Okay. Call or message?
A message.
English or Chinese?
English.
WeChat or WhatsApp?
WeChat.
Apple or Xiaomi?
Apple.
A city apartment or range?
Apartment.
Google or Bing?
Google.
So, Jonathan, you are with McKinsey since around 38 years. If we are informed well, that's an exceptionally long time. So you must be an exceptionally tough and smart guy, I suppose. You've been developing McKinsey's China office and opened its Shanghai branch and location in 1995 and have been a resident since then. What brought you to China in the first place, where we heard about your heritage? That might be the first hint. And what was there to optimize at that time when Pudong, the only thing I could see or we could have seen would be the Oriental Pearl Tower?
All right. Great long question, and I can probably give a really long answer, but let's just start simple. Opportunity. And that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm still here, is that China is a tremendous opportunity, and for myself and for everything I see around me. I just see all of these possibilities, and China is one of those places where possibilities can become reality in one's lifetime, which is different from many other places. So I came because of business, because McKinsey, but it was, as I say, I would not have been in China without McKinsey, but I would not have stayed in McKinsey without China. And the platform that McKinsey has offered me to be here as part of this country is unique and incredibly beneficial, and I feel deeply grateful for it all. But I also realize, I'd like to think I've made something of a contribution in my time here, and just the opportunity to do that in this context is outstanding. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm still here.
So you're in China since 1985, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Give or take. Yeah.
We haven't been on this globe.
Yes. No, that's quite typical at this point.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. So we made some homework and we were checking what you're doing on a daily basis. And you are writing papers. You're making a lot of contribution to the economy in Shanghai and the leaders who have to make decisions. So we found one quote of you, or one title. It's "Combining economic and social development with financial modeling expertise to build new cities and redevelop existing ones." This is what you do, your goal at McKinsey, right? So what are the biggest challenges cities like Shanghai are facing nowadays? Because we believe there are a lot challenges.
Sure. Well, the one I love working in and with cities, and I think because, first of all, you asked the question, apartment or range. Well, that was pretty easy because I think we're all urban. We're all people. We only become truly ourselves around other people. Living alone in a room isn't really being a person. Being a person is a person who works with others, realizes themselves through that, and cities are that at scale. Cities are very simply places where you have a high frequency and a high density of interactions. That you just jam a lot of people together and you force them to interact. The difference between, so for example, you say, what's the problem? Well, typically therefore, mobility is a problem. So when you have that many people, allowing them flexibility of movement to find each other and to be alone when they want to be together, that's a core challenge. The difference between I like to say, the what do we call a place when you put a lot of people in a room and you do not let them move around? We call that a prison. So the difference between a city and a prison is mobility.
Yeah.
So mobility is like one of those core things. Another one is jobs. Every mayor, every district party secretary in the world will complain about not having enough jobs and not having the right kind of jobs and not having the right kind of income for those jobs and so forth. So that's always a thing. And jobs are a way of contributing, of participating in society. So jobs and mobility are the two biggest issues that almost every city has. And then after that, it really depends. Sometimes it's climate, sometimes it's water, sometimes it's crime, sometimes it's environmental, who knows? So that all depends on the place. But the one thing we can say about all of these things and all of these problems is that they have to do with people. They are all about how we as a collective organism, and I can make a fair case that none of us are actually individuals. While we all come into and leave this world individually, we all exist as part of a collective. And maybe we're just that. Maybe we are just the bearers of some collective idea that we live out in our individual consciousness. But by working together and interacting more effectively together, we can become more truly ourselves.
So when it comes to mobility, Shanghai did a quite good job, right?
Shanghai, well, when it comes to everything, Shanghai has done a great job. I am the biggest booster of Shanghai. There is no better story than the Shanghai story on this planet in cities for the last 4 decades. It has nothing to do with the fact that I was here, but
it definitely does. It does.
Very little. I have small contributions here and there, but seriously, when I showed up here in the 80s, we had, give or take, 10, 11, 12 million people. And we had income per capita of somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 per capita. Today, we have 23 million people here, and we have income per capita of somewhere closer to $25,000. So that's an 8 times multiple. Doubling in the population, 4x, 5x in the income. And no city ever has done that. And so I just think this is an astonishing city in terms of its ability to keep it all together, as my mom would say. Just like, the traffic, the economy, the environment, the society as a whole. I mean, it's quite extraordinary.
And if you were the mayor of Shanghai, what would you do? What would your 5-year plan look like?
Well, I think, first of all, no city wants to be like any other city. So I'll start by saying that. London doesn't want to be New York, and Shanghai doesn't want to be Beijing. All cities want to be a better version of themselves. So Shanghai just wants to be a better Shanghai. And so what do Shanghainese people want is the question. So I think that first of all, and they don't only want money. They certainly do want money, but they not only that, they also want a better quality of life. This is usually viewed as sort of aspects of society, whether it's equity and sort of everybody should have a safe place to sleep at night, or its environment and sort of making a cleaner, better place. Shanghai's made a lot of progress on the environmental side, cleaning up the river and sort of making nice parks. On the society side, it's a moving picture. I think they're doing better. There's still quite a lot of issues related to migrant populations and helping them to better integrate in the next generation. And then economy keeps moving. The economy has to always become more higher value added and, more knowledge work. AI is going to make a huge difference across all these things. So I think if my agenda for Shanghai, if I had one, would be about continuing to move beyond its comfort zone. Shanghai can be a little conservative. Can be looking for, what's already working somewhere else. Let's bring that. I think Shanghai could push a little bit more to commercialize things first. So then starting to do an autonomous zone development, for example, and the drones and the autonomous vehicles. I mean, I think that's clearly coming for Shanghai. Some of the healthy consumption. Shanghai should be a leader around making sure that people can feel like their consumption is genuinely productive and healthy in a way which is good for themselves and as individuals, as a society. And so I don't even know what that means, but that's sort of discovering what that might mean, from media to food. So these are kind of things where Shanghai is a commercial center and a bellwether and a sort of a leader for Chinese people and the world, I think has a special role to play.
You quite have a few roles at McKinsey, and one of them is senior partner and the director of the McKinsey Global Institute. So what does a typical day in your life look like? I guess a lot of meetings every day?
Well, it varies, and I try to break it up, but we can, start with today. Starts with, a call at 7 a.m. to do some essentially counseling for somebody, and then some personal calls, and then and today, this morning, I came to you directly from boxing.
Oh, okay.
So I did that for an hour, which is a good way for me at my age, particularly to keep in shape. And then we do this, and then we have the McKinsey Global Institute. We're going to have an hour-long meeting there. And then I'm going to see a client for an hour or two, and it's one thing after another, and then another podcast as it happens.
Oh, really?
It's a bit of a day for podcasts. But I try to vary the day between. It's very important to sort of at least every day, see somebody who I haven't seen before for a long time. I mean, as in a client or a friend or someone who is not part of my daily routine. And I find that's fresh. And then also also very important to do something for myself every day. Some type of exercise or walk or, just something that is an hour a day for myself.
Sounds great.
Absolutely. Coming here after boxing, that's good. We have a relaxed Jonathan in our office.
Pretty much.
Perfect. And if you were to name 3 sectors in which China would lead in particular, in the next decade, what would that be?
Well, when you say sector, it sounds like a business sector, so industry. So I'll go with that because I think first of all, the way China will lead will be to sort of redefine what it means to be a sector. So like we're seeing in mobility right now. It's like, we used to say there was an automotive sector. I'm not actually sure we have one of those anymore. That we're getting to a mobility sector, and I'm not sure there was mobility. It may simply be, advanced electronics or something that's sort of integrating. So China will lead in the redefinition of industries and through technology and the deployment, particularly of AI and related technologies. But I think that's one. China will also lead in sustainability. And so we call sustainability as a multidisciplinary set of technologies ranging from storage and grid management through to the chemistry of batteries and some AI sort of bleeds in there as well. And so sustainability, AI and its applications, and if I was going to pick anything else, I think that China already leads in B2C internet. I mean, it's sort of like I love the meme that goes around of Elon. It's sort of like buy Twitter, copy WeChat.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I think B2C internet, they already win on that one.
Yeah, you're so right. I just went to the Auto Shanghai, the trade fair, and people were saying, and German media were saying, okay, Chinese companies are not building cars anymore. They're building mobile phones on 4 wheels. So it's not automotive anymore. It's like the whole interaction between automotive and social media and also mobile phones, internet, everything happens in China.
I think China realized at some point that it was just not going to be able to, nor should it, try to replicate some of the materials science-driven mechanical industry. So China still cannot make a decent internal combustion engine, and probably never will.
Yeah, but
sort of
also
skip that.
Forget about
just skip it. Yeah. But also, as proud Germans, and you're also of German heritage, we are very sure that there's something that China can learn from Europe, or especially from Germany. Is there something in your eyes that they should learn from us Germans?
Of course. No, I mean, first of all, China has it's going through its moment, and it's a long moment, but it's a moment. It's a moment of awakening, and I tie it back to urbanization and sort of when literally a billion people collectively wake up and sort of move off the countryside and into cities and start to interact as people who you can have a conversation with. Well, obviously it's going to change a lot, and they're going to have a huge impact. It doesn't mean that, everybody else disappears. I mean, there are 6 billion other people on the planet, give or take. So those folks also have, a story, and it's a big story, actually. And I think if Germany, of course, has its story. It's full of drama and it's full of opportunities. I think what China, first of all, should take away from this is that every place, every people has its story. And there should be something to learn from all of us. And if they get wrapped up in China gets wrapped up in its own story at its own risk. Sort of become too self-centered. In fact, historically, that is, if there is a challenge to Chinese governance, that's what it is. It's the central kingdom, as in
中国.
It tends to look internally. It does not go back, to the apocryphal Lord Macartney voyage, saying, I don't need any of your foreign things.
Yeah.
So that was a predecessor to failure. So the Qing dynasty fell because it failed to reform and failed to look outside. So I think China very much understands that it needs to understand how the West works, how Germany works, and what it does well in order to help China. And so we say, what is that? Well, basic stuff. A justice system would be a good thing. A functioning financial market would be a good thing. I think one of the things that Germany has done extraordinarily well post-war was the redevelopment of the housing economy and the ability to create long-term developmental institutions that provided security for developers to provide low-income housing. Now, you hear Xi Jinping talking about how housing is for living in, not for speculation. Well, let's see some of that housing. Let's see some of that. More importantly, let's see some of the financial institutions that you need to put in place, these regional Kantonalbank or whatever, for China, that, if you don't have that, nobody's going to borrow the money for low-income housing because it's not going to earn a return. And so that is something that Germany innovated on, Netherlands and a few other places. That's an example. So there are stories around how societies in Germany have responded to their challenges that China can learn from.
Although Germans are not very happy with their housing situation right now in 2023, right?
Yeah, but who is? I mean, in Shanghai, we can also complain about.
I think there is a sell-by date, and we all need to renew and renovate and innovate again. That was the 1950s, early 1950s. It's 70 years later. I think it's about time for some political reform wherever we are. So, but we should pay attention to the past. Maybe Germany should also remember what Germany did before and go back to that.
Yeah, we should talk about this housing topic later again. And you have advised many also national governments on how to attract foreign investors, and maybe especially at the moment, multinational companies operating in China must reconfigure for risk and reward. Right? What are the most prominent challenges investors are facing at the moment?
Well, the main challenge for global companies is primarily the rising bar on competition in China. That local competition has just become much tougher, and both in terms of the always was tough in terms of capacity and margin pressure, and just the ability of Chinese companies to throw large amounts of money at problems and sort of last man standing kind of economics and price wars all over the place. So that was always tough. But what's new is the increasing capabilities of local companies on design and product development and innovation. That China's just continues to take huge steps forward in almost every industry. I mean, there are still some places, maybe in life sciences or some technologies fields, where China still faces is still not really at the level playing field with global companies. But for almost everything else, and if you look at consumer goods as well now, increasingly, certainly it's in mobility, China is a head-to-head competitor, and Chinese companies, local Chinese companies. So that's the biggest risk, is that you lose to fair and square on competition with local companies. After that, it becomes about being a good multinational. So the job of being a good multinational is implicit in the name, multinational, as in the ability to work across countries. And that's their job, is to move money, talent, people, data, intellectual property, goods, services across borders. And in a increasingly bordered world with more geopolitics and more bottlenecks or just complexity, well, that job gets harder. So be a good multinational, and be good at your job.
Yeah, and talking about it, Shanghai faced some challenges the last year because of closed borders, because of all the lockdowns, and also damage in the reputation because of the hard lockdowns. So do you see a trend for foreign investors investing in other Asian countries like Vietnam, Thailand, rather than in China because of the last years?
Well, I think, yes, objectively, but not because of that per se. I think that objectively there is clearly more investment going outside of China, or some investments that might have been made in China alone are now being made in China +1, as it's being said, or just that there is other additional investment priorities, notably in South Asia, in South and Southeast Asia. There's a good reason for that, and that's basically because those are good markets. One should invest in them. They are growing. And they're growing much faster than they were before. So because of that, people are saying, well, it's not only about China. And now it's about China plus Malaysia, or China plus India, or China plus wherever. And that's fine. That's a good thing. And if you actually look at who's doing all that investment, a lot of it's coming from Chinese companies. So they're the ones who are offshoring from China because they're saying, well, I need to have a supply chain that's non-Chinese. Aren't you Chinese? Yeah, doesn't matter. I just need to be able to say the product came from other places. And so I think that's what's happening is we're seeing an emergence of a broader marketplace, and with that in Asia, and with that we're actually seeing integration. So China is starting to pull together Asia, and so increasingly we will not be able to differentiate those two things. Very similar historically, if you will, to how Japan did before, in the sense of the scale and scope of integration. Before, if you wanted to see what was common across Asia, you'd look at Mitsui or Mitsubishi or Sumitomo. These guys were the ones who were calling it together. Now it's Alibaba.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that Chinese companies are now in the process of learning to become multinational companies, right? Because most of them were just focusing on the local market, but now they learn what we Germans learned after World War II, maybe how to become good multinational companies, as you said in the question before.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Heinrich von Pirra was once asked a question about whether he was worried about, losing the cachet associated with being made in Germany. And making all these funny places in China. And he said, well, we don't think about it as made in Germany. We think about it as made by Siemens.
Yeah.
So similarly, I think Chinese companies need to establish a model that's effectively theirs, independent of the reality that, of course, their home market is China. But if we look at many of these groups, they're predicated on having a significant global market share. And there are many technologies which, if they do not have that global market share, they will not have that technology. That technology will not develop because it needs global scale. And so they have to. It's not optional.
As we discussed in our podcast before a lot of times, that made in Germany is not enough anymore, right? You have to have more selling points than just made in Germany.
Well, I think it's for many things, it's hard to say that one location will be. Actually, we've done work on this. We can tell you that if we look at global trade, roughly 40% of global trade is what we call concentrated products. And that means less than 3 countries provide the majority of those products. Of that 40%, actually 10% is actually the truly global concentrated. So maybe 1 out of 10 products, 1 out of $10 of trade is something you could say you could potentially have a made in Germany solution for. But that's only 10% of all trade. And every country has all trade because every country is a country. So it's impossible to say my economy can be entirely made in Germany. That doesn't work.
And now you've mentioned in the top 3 things where China would lead: sustainability, AI, B2C, consumer internet. Now China is really a digital economy, right? It's become extremely big and very sophisticated, that it became hard to describe it to people who have never experienced it, right? So we need to be in China, and you've been in China for a long time. What fascinates you most about it, and how could China have developed this economy so rapidly?
First, it's this philosophy of mass entrepreneurship. And I think the reason it has developed this way is that literally the people of China were told to go out and be entrepreneurs. There wasn't really much of a plan. It was more about, now it's up to you. It's sort of like, we got rid of the communes. We got rid of the collectives. We got rid of the state enterprises. People sort of thought that China had a state enterprise economy. That was Zhou Rongji's job back in the 90s and early 2000s, sell all that. Laid off 50 million people. That was the most hated man in China for quite a number of years. May still be by some folks. But yeah, that was it. And then with that, overnight, first of all, we created an urban middle class. So everybody who used to work in a state enterprise got an apartment, and that was collateral, and they could borrow, and they did. And they went out and started businesses. And so we have more entrepreneurs in China than anywhere else on the planet, with more capital. And so that is what made it happen, because without that, you wouldn't have savings, and you wouldn't have the ability to invest in startups, whatever they were. So all of that was the fertile ground. Now, where did the technology come in? Well, I think I think we have to, first of all, say we do have ability to deploy hardware at scale. So China decided that it would spend 40% of its GDP in investment. And you can say, well, that was wasteful and inefficient, and it was, but it was also very effective. So we built a lot of roads, and then we built a lot of fiber, and then we built a lot of high-speed rail. We built a lot of pretty much everything, strong, smart grid. So all of that enabled the technology. If you don't do that, it's very hard to have technology because you don't have any infrastructure. So it was good at that. And then we basically said, okay, and there are no rules. I mean, there is no rules for fintech in China. Or there wasn't up until
not yet.
Yeah. Quite recently, a few people discovered the rules. But it was more about, it's wild that the payment of 1.3 billion people is intermediated by 2 private companies.
Yeah, crazy.
It's like, this is something that usually the banking system, the central banks would say, no. We're in charge of the payment mechanism. Apparently not in China. Ali and WeChat are in charge of how people use money every day.
Yeah.
Of course, it has to be unquestioned faith that the regulator can and will intervene at some point. And when they do, you go along with them. So that's, I think, this implicit trust in the regulator is also part of the system that's why this works. But in the absence of intervention, basically, it's all up to you. And so people innovate like crazy. So I always think that the single biggest innovation, of course, is QR codes. So if I'm a small and medium-sized enterprise, in order to become a digital company, you know what I have to do? I have to make a photocopy. That's it.
Yeah.
I make a photocopy of a QR code. Now I'm a digital company. People can pay me. I can transact. I can have a website. All of this stuff. All it takes is literally a photocopy. And there's so many funny stories. People, occasional unhoused person on the sidewalk, shows you a photocopy of a QR code. Please scan and send me money.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a digital China. It's just low cost, mass entrepreneurship, lots of hardware, and a regulator that sort of keeps an eye on things but doesn't get in your way.
So 99% of our listeners are working for multinational companies, and we're talking about it. In your decades living in Shanghai and China, you have seen everything. You have seen crises and chances. You have seen bearish markets, bullish markets. You have seen ups and downs. And in 2023, a lot of people who don't have the experience you have, they think it's like new quality of problems, new quality of challenges. Do you have any advice for them how to handle this new world with much more economic and geopolitical challenges? Is there anything you can tell them?
Well, I won't be... On the one hand, that question begs for an answer about something out of Ecclesiastes,
Yes.
What has been is no longer, what will be is not yet.
Yeah.
We've sort of seen all this before and so forth and so on. But no, I don't think there's anything particularly philosophical about this. China, as I like to say, is the least romantic place in the world. Nobody really cares about whatever happened before. That's not important.
Yeah.
What only matters is what's happening right now.
And in the future.
Maybe a bit in the future, but actually pretty much right now.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
But the future is more that we have to have faith and confidence. And generally speaking, Chinese people and Chinese society, I won't generalize too much, so the polls will tell you that they think things are getting better. They think that things will get better for their children, and all their children will be better than they are today. They are themselves today. And that, of course, is different between the U.S. and China, for example.
And also in Germany. Germans
won't speak for the Germans, but I know for the U.S. that, so that's the faith in the future part, which is like, fine, it's there. But am I going to predict it? It is like asking Chinese people, anybody to predict what's going to be in China in 5 or 10 years. It's like, no idea. But, as far as so people live in the present. And I would encourage people to do so. That a lot of the phantasms of our, nightmares, they're just that. They're just nightmares. They're just dreams. They're not actually what we have. And what we have today is a very robust economy. We have certainly more complexity. We've got challenges, and we've got competition at speed and scale. Those are reality. That's like right now. So multinationals and people working for, as I keep telling you, is like you take your eye off the ball at your own risk. Something's going to smack you in the face. So if don't do that. Live in the present. And just keep up. I mean, it's all that most people should do is just keep up, with whatever new thing is coming out right now, and technology and the competition and branding, all this stuff.
That is very philosophical. I mean, like, don't worry about the past, don't worry about the future, just do what you ought to do today.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of problems that you imagine could happen won't.
Yeah. Pretty much. And I mean, so that's, and it's great to be able to live in the present in China, because there are, if one can fully immerse oneself in this environment. I think for foreigners who come here, I mean, I would argue that it's a relatively flexible, easy to get to know people, easy to understand place once one is here. One is looking from it. The outside, it can be confusing because you're looking through a glass dimly lit, or, a rose-colored glass, or whatever. You're looking through a lens. You don't really see it. But once one is here, I think China is very, as you say, WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. And it's pretty clear how things work.
Well, you also do much research about homelessness, also homelessness in the US, for example, in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Why do we hardly see any homeless on the streets here in Shanghai, but we see so many of them, or much more, in the United States?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I would say China is well on its way to acquiring that particular problem as well. I mean, it's
really?
not. I think it's a fundamental externality of capitalism. I mean, it's because essentially one price does not clear two markets. And if you want some piece of property or land for investment purposes, one person wants it for investment purposes, the other person wants it for shelter. The person who wants it for investment purposes will get it. And so that leaves the person wanting it for shelter without shelter. And at some point, that leaves that person on the street. And because some people will not be able to pay anything because they are mentally ill, because they're addicted to something, because they've had a bad decision, because they're deeply in debt. Who knows? There are many reasons why people might not be able to pay their rent. And so in those cases, one has a decision as a society. Does one want to provide housing for that person or not? And if one does not have that decision, well, then you're going to have a lot of unhoused people.
Yeah, and talking about housing, in particular here in Shanghai, housing prices have risen, or they only know one direction, right, up in the last 30 years. Yeah, now we have had some developments in the last 2 years of maybe something has been shaken, but maybe not so much. What is your perspective on the property market in Shanghai, and would you advise us as a next young generation to buy housing in Shanghai right now?
And Shanghai needs son-in-laws. This is also important to mention.
Very good. Okay, well, you clearly have aspirations to become part of Chinese society, and so if you already are, no, of course you should buy. But like all things, well, real estate. First of all, 70% of the world's balance sheet, the wealth, is in the ground. We store it in the ground. And so if you are the type of person who is attempting to accumulate wealth, yes, you should buy real estate. And then the question of where, well, location. But there's a piece of real estate for every price point. And so maybe not in city center, but, and most people that I know who are starting off their careers in Shanghai are buying out, either back home in their Laojia somewhere up in Anhui or Henan, or they're doing something in an outer suburb of Shanghai. So there's always something here. And the whole point of this is that real estate is the way we monetize economic activity. So if you believe in the future of economic activity, then you believe in sort of getting an option on that, because over time, that economic activity becomes the thing that creates wealth, creates taxes, creates income, creates, the ability to support rent, and that rent gets paid to the people who own the land. So that's why you buy the real estate, in theory. So I would say yes. But of course, you can always pay too much. Fully priced things exist, and it's quite cyclical with the dynamics of cost of money. Cost of money is these days it's slightly cheaper than it was, I don't know, for the last 3 or 4 years. China's been deleveraging. So that may, when they say deleveraging, meaning keeping interest rates relatively high. And they're slacking off a little bit, but it's not cheap per se. So yeah, I mean, I think, but those are timing issues. And I think that if you are a long-term hold as a younger person who's saying like, I'm in it for the next 10, 20 years, then yeah, you should definitely buy.
Okay, 加油, Damian. 加油. So 5-year plans are very, very loved especially by Chinese authorities. And we would love to hear another recommendation from you. So what would you advise global business executives who listen to our podcast on how to set their priorities regarding their China business for the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, 5-year plans are basically good for the first year or two. You're off in year 4 of the 5-year plan. Like, I'm not sure your crystal ball was all that good. It's a little fuzzy. But the whole point being that some things one needs to be able to say, well, this will pay off in 3 or 5 years. And so I know it's going to take that long, basically. Because if everything you do is supposed to pay off immediately the next 6 months, well, probably you're not preparing well enough for whatever might happen beyond that. So some things just take longer. So that's why we have a 5-year plan. It's just so that we can say, well, I know that some things are going to take a little bit longer, but it doesn't mean you wait 5 years and then you do it. You're doing it now, whether it's an R&D project or it's a talent development program. You start now knowing that it's going to take you 3 to 5 years to get the product or get the person or get whatever you're trying to do. So that's the point. So in that context, you sort of say, okay, well, what are some of the things that I know I need to be good at in the next 3 to 5 years for China, in China? And I start going back to this pace of competition, just relentless. And so our ability to keep up. I mean, how does one run faster anyway? Well, one gets in shape. And so we need to get in shape, which means more talent. We need to sort of get the technological capabilities going. And really, again, the most important thing probably is just decision-making. Is that if every decision has to be referred back to headquarters somewhere, well, it's just going to take longer. You're going to be slower. Yeah. And so that's the number one thing, is to move decision-making to China. And that doesn't mean in China for China, because then you're just a local company. But you're not. You're a multinational. So again, that's your job. Your job is to be good at managing across borders. So that means moving global decision-making to China. And, whether it's purchasing or design or engineering, but those decision makers, whichever ones are really critical for your industry and your competition, they need to be in China. And, you can say, well, how do I move the guy from Karlsruhe to Henan? And it's like, well, I think that's an interesting challenge for you. Is that's what it means to be a good multinational, is that you can do that. That you're not afraid of that conversation. That how do I go tell, Joe that his next posting for the next 3 years as a top 5 member of the management board is in Henan. Mm-hmm. And his family can be wherever they want to be. So.
That's a very interesting thought and topic we never had. There's a lot of these in China, for China, as you say. And maybe especially last 3 years, because of the COVID policy, we've seen a lot of international leaders, C-level experts moving out of China and not so many following back in. Mm-hmm. Right. So is that one of the key issues that you are seeing at the moment, that maybe at the multinational companies, their subsidiaries in China are becoming more and more Chinese? Up until completely Chinese, and that we should actually reverse that a little bit and bring a diverse international foreign Chinese leadership team to China, that they can rule their international multinational markets from China, as making China their new second headquarter globally?
Yeah, I mean, I would frame it as we need to have global leadership teams. And those global leadership teams need to be based in the markets where they are most needed. And and so whether they are Chinese or Western or Russian or Israeli or whatever is secondary. I've met a lot of very Western Chinese people, and I've met a lot of very Chinese Western people. you two are very Chinese Western people.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that is a good thing. And I think that multinationals are smart enough to figure that out. So, but it's mostly a question of, do they feel like their social rights, their decision-making capability, their team leadership can function across distances. Being a good multinational is very difficult. You literally have to be in 2 places at the same time, if not 10 places at the same time, and somehow still feel like a team. And so a lot of that relies on, maybe everybody does come from the same village. And that's okay, but they have to be able to be globally distributed. And so on the other hand, maybe you have a way of thinking about things like everybody comes from wherever they come from, but once they're here, they're all part of us. And that ties us together. So yes, there was a bit of an outflow. I mean, naturally, some people said, look, hey, my family can't take this anymore. But Chinese people left too. And I think it wasn't particularly confined to Western or Chinese. It was just like, this is bad. I don't want to be around this right now. But now we're done with all that. So let's hopefully see, I think that this market is incredibly important for multinationals, and for whoever is in this market and is able to compete effectively in this market will have a benefit, will have a preferred position in global competition, because this market will provide technology, innovation, branding, market access, a whole bunch of other things, money.
Wow, this was a lot of food for thought in around 50 minutes. And I think especially our listeners from multinational companies learned a lot. I personally too. So Jonathan, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you here, and hopefully not the last time that you were on our podcast. Look forward
to the follow-up. Okay.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and talk to you soon.
All right. Tschüss.
Tschüss.
Tschüss.